Israeli media is saying what the fuck I've been saying, which is that you can't do a carrot and a stick if you're never going to show the stick. The stick meaning denying weapons transfers. That's it. Okay? That's on the table. That's been on the table since October 8th, but they've never used it. Let's get to Israel-Palestine now, though, because that's obviously a very serious point of contention. As I've said time and time again, this is going to... It seems like it's not that big of a deal, okay? It seems like it is not that big of a deal, okay? Yeah, I know, it's me. It seems like it's not that big of a deal for the Democratic Party. They're making this calculation that people are not going to think about it because it's foreign policy, and many people don't give a shit about it. If you look at the DNC, there's very little mentions of it overall. It is a big fucking deal. It's obviously an immoral, unconscionable act of violence that we are funding and facilitating. CNN analysis talking about how the IDF humanitarian zone in Gaza has shrunk down to 10,000 acres. My friends that I talk to in Gaza are having to move once again. The conditions are worsening there. All the while, Benjamin Netanyahu is playing the exact same game that he has played since the fucking start. And he shouldn't play a different game than the one he's been playing because we are allowing him to do this. Okay? We are allowing him to do this. The American government, Joe Biden specifically, is dictating our foreign policy and our allegiance to Israel and not doing the smart elder statesman thing that you expect him to do in this circumstance. Okay? A smart elder statesman with 50 years of foreign policy bona fides should not be allowing Israel to run rampant in the way that it has. There's a carrot and a stick, and so far, we've just shoved as many carrots as we can down the gullet of the Israeli administration. Okay? That's all we've done. Now, I'm going to catch you up really quickly. on what we've talked about so far. Obviously, the last round of ceasefire talks that were supposed to be trilateral ceasefire talks with Qatar, with Egypt, with the Egyptian envoys, with the Qatari envoys, and with the United States of America, were supposed to be conducted on August 15th. That's 6 days ago. It's been fucking 6 days since that conversation started. These ceasefire negotiations came after Israel killed the principal negotiator on the Hamas side. Israel killed the Hamas political bureau chief, Ismail Haniyeh. They assassinated him in Tehran, violating Iranian sovereignty. They killed a foreign diplomat in another country, a foreign adversary in the region. Inside of the soil of this foreign adversary in the region, they assassinated him, right? Obviously, that shows that they have no real commitment to a ceasefire negotiation, but we knew that already, okay? We knew that already, right? Having said that, however, does the public in the United States of America know that reality? Not necessarily, and that's precisely because the American foreign policy apparatus, the State Department, routinely communicates everything they can, routinely communicates messaging that is so pro-Israel that they end up sometimes outflanking Israel. The major point of contention for those of you who are unfamiliar with this process so far is that there is a three-phase ceasefire and permanent cessation of hostilities proposal out there on the table. This proposal is nearly identical, according to Anthony Blinken, who also reiterated this, to the Hamas proposal that was delivered in February. This proposal was brought forward by Joe Biden in March, okay? When Joe Biden brought forward this proposal, he claimed it was the Israeli proposal. However, even though he claimed this was the Israeli proposal, okay, Israel never committed to the proposal. Benjamin Netanyahu always kept claiming that there was a difference in opinion in terms of how Israel wanted to do this three-phase proposal, including the change from phase 1 to phase 2, where Benjamin Netanyahu kept reiterating that he would continue the war and continue bombing Gaza after all the hostages were taken out of Gaza. Now, that means that there was no real ceasefire proposal to begin with. You can't have a ceasefire proposal without ceasing fire, right? You cannot have a cessation of hostilities without a cessation of hostilities. So phase one was supposed to be a ceasefire. They said no to that. Some of the most important aspects of this conversation, most important points of contention in this ceasefire negotiations has been Israel's unwillingness to remove their troops from two specific corridors in the Gaza Strip. The Netzarim corridor, which cuts across the Gaza Strip, and the Philadelphia corridor, which is the southern border on the Gaza Strip with Egypt. Okay? This includes Israeli troops on Egyptian soil as well, on both sides of the Rafah border crossing. Egypt itself has also been very critical of this. Israel literally killed Egyptian border guards in the process when they were invading Egyptian land, violating their sovereignty as well. Egypt is a vassal state. They won't make too much of a stink about it, obviously, because they rely heavily on American funding to even exist, to the tune of billions of dollars, even more money than Israel itself. So that obviously is a non-starter. That doesn't make any fucking sense, right? You can't be like, oh, we want to do a ceasefire proposal, except we're not going to cease fire. You're just going to give us all the hostages, and then we're going to keep bombing you, okay? Or we're going to withdraw our troops and allow freedom of travel within the Gaza Strip for all Palestinians, but also simultaneously, we're going to keep a permanent occupation that cuts across the Gaza Strip and also control the southern border between Gaza, Palestinian soil, and Egypt. Okay? That's not a ceasefire. That's not an end to the occupation. That's fucking bullshit, right? Now, what's interesting about this is that while Israel has been the primary spoiler in this conversation, for some weird fucking reason, the American envoys, anytime an American is involved, they literally keep saying it's Hamas. Hamas has been ruining the talks. It's like Hamas keeps saying, no, we are committed. We made a commitment. We said yes to a ceasefire proposal that is identical to the one that the United Nations voted on, right? The UN voted on this. Security Council said this is it. This is 2735, United Nations Resolution 2735. That is the proposal that we want. That is the one that is an actual three-phase ceasefire and permanent cessation of hostilities and reconstruction proposal. Israel keeps trying to change it, right? Israel keeps trying to change the commitment, trying to change the, fuck you, man. I ain't watching you today. Are you all right? Anyway, the real reason as to why they're doing this, why Israel is doing this, and why America's doing this is because America's playing defense for Israel. Because once Israel violated Iranian sovereignty, Iran and Lebanon and Ansar Allah in Yemen said they would retaliate. Lebanon with Hezbollah, Ansar Allah in Yemen, they said they would retaliate. They would retaliate in kind because Israel had also assassinated a couple high-ranking Hezbollah generals as well in the process. So when that happened, that was an additional vector of pressure upon the state of Israel to hopefully agree to the ceasefire negotiation in an effort to thwart the Iranian retaliation that would inevitably come, the axis of resistance retaliation that would inevitably come. However, I don't think Netanyahu gives a shit about that because Netanyahu wants this retaliation to occur so that they can go into Lebanon, most likely, and invade Lebanon and pull the United States of America into conflict directly. Okay? We have 4,000 Marines surrounding the Arabian Peninsula. We have many aircraft carriers in the region now, and they're on a holding pattern waiting to go to potentially war, not in a defensive posture like the last time Iran retaliated, but this time in an offensive posture to go directly with boots on the ground military warfare. Now, Iran told time and time again that they had a commitment to the ceasefire and that they would not want to fuck up the ceasefire proposal. But now that the ceasefire is falling apart because Benjamin Netanyahu, one, tried to change the terms and conditions, and two, still has not agreed to it, despite the fact that Anthony Blinken, who was in Israel and just left Israel yesterday, openly fucking lied about Israel agreeing to the terms and conditions made by the ceasefire proposal, and that it was Hamas's fault that they were holding up the talks. Once again, Benjamin Netanyahu has not said as much, okay? Like, so he's not even on board with his own fucking proposal, dude. He's not even on board with his own new proposal with new poison pill amendments baked into it. Okay? Blinken says Israel's agreed to U.S. proposal to close remaining gaps on ceasefire deal and calls on Hamas to do the same. Remember, he lied about this. Analysis, duped again. The U.S. somehow heard Netanyahu say yes to a Gaza deal. He didn't. The Americans are pushing for a deal with the new urgency, trying to avert a regional conflagration before November's presidential election. But the next few days will indicate whether the U.S. is ready to use levers of influence it chose not to in the last 10 months, which is crazy. Again, that's Haaretz writing this, okay? This is Haaretz's own analysis. Israeli media is saying what the fuck I've been saying, which is that you can't do a carrot and a stick if you're never going to show the stick. The stick meaning denying weapons transfers. That's it. Okay? That's on the table. That's been on the table since October 8. But they've never used it, and they refused to use it. There was only one weapon shipments that they held back for a little bit, and there was a conversation surrounding whether or not a troop within the IDF that was doing war crimes would get sanctioned. They removed those sanctions packages quietly against some of the settlers, and against they stopped the investigation that they were going to commit to an IDF troop. So like a brigade specifically. So obviously America's not being serious about this conversation at all, and is on this, like I said, double suicide pact alongside Israel's own Donald Trump, Benjamin Netanyahu, who also happens to be an ally to Donald Trump, by the way. Benjamin Netanyahu is. So, you think Biden admin is too scared to upset the Jewish lobbying groups? Jewish lobbying? No, it's a Zionist lobbying group. It's not a Jewish lobbying group, okay? That's number one. And no, I think Biden is just a rabid ultra-Zionist himself. I think that is a personal opinion that he has, that he's maintained very openly, okay? Anti-Israel hackers stole troves of sensitive Israeli data and are now publishing gigs of secret and classified information. Unable to stop the hacks, Israel is waging a futile war against the leaks. Could Netanyahu sabotage talks to make Democrats look bad and boost Trump? I think Benjamin Netanyahu wants to continue the war, and I think that the continuation of the war requires Benjamin Netanyahu to escalate so that they can actually pull America into direct conflict. If America is pulled into direct conflict, this will be seen as a major fucking flaw for the Biden administration. This will be seen as a major fuck up, okay? The moment that you have American coffins draped with the American flag getting shipped back to the United States of America at the behest of defending Israel and defending Israel's genocidal campaign, the dynamic of this race will change dramatically. This is something that I've been warning about for months now, okay? And nobody fucking seems to hear it. Now, the solution to this is quite simple, okay? The solution to this is to do the exact opposite of what the Biden administration has done so far. Not only that, but only 2 of the several hundreds of weapon shipments since October 7th have been put through congressional review. Biden has used executive order to expedite the process and bypass Congress. Don't do that, okay? Releasing $18 billion in funds, specifically in arms purchases to Israel, is a psychotic maneuver in the midst of this conversation when we should be applying pressure to Israel. You have former Israeli hostage negotiators saying Biden needs to apply pressure to Israel, specifically to the Netanyahu administration. You have Israeli media saying Biden needs to apply pressure to Israel, specifically denying weapons transfers, halting weapons transfers, because it is getting completely out of hand. These aren't exactly people who are, woke or whatever. There's like liberal Zionists who are finally coming to that recognition as well. The last few months of $30 billion in genocide arms, if given Israel, would have solved homelessness in the U.S. 5 times over. Yeah, we're not even talking about the other aspect of that, okay? Obviously, that's a different aspect of this conversation. Okay? So, overall, it is an untenable, unmanageable situation that could be changed instantly. Okay, so the phone call that Biden had. Okay, before we get to the phone call that Biden had, which Kamala Harris sat on apparently. Okay, according to Barack Ravid's reporting on Axios, I want to talk about this other thing. Tommy Vitor posted a New York Times graph that that openly shows what is going on here. This graph in the New York Times is important, says Tommy Vitor, one of the Pod Johns. Israeli hostage families blame Netanyahu for blocking a ceasefire deal, as do the Israeli negotiators, intelligence officials, the military, and broad swaths of the Israeli public. But the U.S. keeps giving Bibi cover by only blaming Hamas. So if you're an American only consuming American media, if you're not here at the Hasanabi broadcast at the top of the hour, avoiding 3-minute ad breaks by subscribing, you have a very different perspective on the matter. Okay? A perspective that is not real, a perspective that is objectively false. Okay, if your parents, for example, that are simply watching, mainstream media that oftentimes is just simply reiterating exactly what Anthony Blinken is saying, reiterating the most unimaginably pro-Israel, commentary you've ever heard. They're not getting the truth. They're not getting the truth at all. There's no other way to put it. Okay, if they have personally been duped into believing that it is Hamas that is like ruining these peace talks, these ceasefire negotiations, even after Israel killed the principal negotiator, okay, then that's it. They've been fed a steady diet of propaganda and are completely oblivious to the reality. Here's a 3-minute ad break now, by the way. Okay. The lack of progress in talks has also tortured relatives of the roughly 109 hostages still held in Gaza. Some have asked why the Biden admin has not put more pressure on Netanyahu, whose nickname is Bibi, to compromise. He's hiding behind the Americans, said Gilad Korngold, 63, whose son Tal Shaham is one of the hostages. I don't understand the Americans. They really need to tell Bibi, look, we're your friends and protectors, but you're going to go free the hostages. This is the time. Does the leash exist now? Like, what if Bibi just strikes as soon as a weapons transfer falls through? I think that if America openly communicated that they are no longer going to give weapons to Israel, that they're no longer going to defend Israel as long as Israel is like continuing on this multiple front war as long as Benjamin Netanyahu continues its NSEAG, okay, America is not going to be there hand in hip or attached to their hip, defending them every step of the way. Things would change dramatically because ultimately, obviously, no matter how fucking unimaginably cruel and psychotic Benjamin Netanyahu is, he's not going to fucking sit there and allow every single Israeli to be murdered, okay? He's not going to sit there as Tel Aviv gets wiped out. He wants, obviously, for some semblance of a legacy, he wants to be the guy who oversaw the complete death and destruction of Gaza and maybe even dealt with Hamas finally, okay? Like completely destroyed Gaza so that like all the Palestinians that live there can no longer live there and have to leave and have to maybe go to the Sinai Peninsula or some shit, okay? That's what he wants. He still cares about his fucking legacy. He is not going to sit there, I suspect, and allow or be the guy that gets that causes Israel to be fucking, to incur significant human casualties. Biden to Bibi call is done. White House to release the readout ETA soon. Okay. I am interested to see what that conversation looks like. But again, if Israel was sanctioned, how can we be sure that they won't make some side connections just like Russia does? Brother, Israel is not Russia. Okay? Russia is a foreign adversary that has geared up its economy to avoid sanctions throughout the past multiple decades at this point. Okay? Israel is attached to the hip of the United States of America. Israel would not exist at all without the United States of America's unlimited support. Okay? And I'm not even talking about just its defense, right? 69% of weapons that Israel uses come directly from the United States of America. You cannot make up that gap. Israel also has its own weapons industry, but that would never be able to keep up with the demand necessary. Okay? It's nothing. It's not even a question. Okay? It's not even a fucking question. Also, American sanctions packages do not mean that America is the only country sanctioning you. It means the entire world is sanctioning you. Israel is not going to be able to turn around and like fucking utilize the same resources that Iran utilizes. Okay? Do you understand what I mean? It's not a thing. It's not even a thing. It's not, it's just not, it's not even a question. Scoop, President Biden is expected to speak to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Wednesday, that's today, and urge him to show more flexibility on the Egypt-Gaza border so a hostage and ceasefire deal can be reached. Okay? President Biden spoke with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to discuss the ceasefire and hostage release deal and diplomatic efforts to de-escalate regional tensions. Vice President Harris also joined the call, the White House said. if that conversation did not even feature, if this conversation did not even feature stopping weapons transfers as a way to threaten the Israeli administration, the stick, if you will, because we've done the carrot. The carrot strategy is the bear hug. The stick would be no more weapons. No more weapons unless you obviously stop this war, okay? Oh, it's good policy. It's good politics. It's good for the election. And I am in awe that people just simply refuse to recognize that. Okay?